Good evening and welcome to tonight's Bible study. We have worked our way up to Ecclesiastes Chapter 7. Um, I'll go ahead and read it. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fool is in the house of pleasure. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the songs of fools. Like the cracking of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the laps of fool. Do not say, "Why were the old days better than these?" For it is not wise to ask such question. Wisdom like an inheritance is a good thing, and benefit those who see the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. And when times are bad, consider this: God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these: the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whosoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Wisdom make one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. Instead, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sin. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I am determined to be wise, but this was beyond me. Whatever exists is far off and most profound. Who can discover it? So I turned my mind to understand, to investigate, and to search out wisdom and the schemes of things, and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, whose hands are chained. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare. Look, says the teacher, this is what I have discovered, adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things. While I was still searching, but not finding, I found one upright person among 1,000. This only have I found. God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. This chapter, and I remind y'all that we're the ones who made it chapter and verses. When Solomon wrote this was one continuous reading, and people would pause and discuss the parts of it, especially parts that were proverbs. I know we're in the book of Ecclesiastes, but there's obvious proverbs in here. And we see that over and over. For example, verse 10, it says, do not say, where were the old days? Why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such question. One little paragraph, which is a proverb. And unfortunately, too many people, especially as we get older, and I find myself doing this every so often, but do not say, why were the old days better than these? Too many people focus on the past and are very nostalgic about the past, the good old days, the good old days, the good old days. And as a matter of fact, I have heard it said before that the good old days were not that very good. It is just that we have misty eyes. And there are some people who just live in the good old days. I know, for example, a guy who goes to every Friday night football and is a big football guy. And he always is talking about when he was the big guy on the team back in high school. And he's still living in the good old days when things were so great. He was the important person on the football team and important in high school. Well, high school for me has been 40 years. 40 years. How many of us are still living in the good old days? And it's not just in our lives, but there are people who are living that way in the church. For example, let's take the United Methodist Church, the good old days in the 60s when church attendance was high. Before, the Cultural Revolution and before what we see today where people aren't attending church. Unfortunately, there were good things back then and there were also bad things. And I know today there are good things and there are bad things. But here is Solomon's advice. Do not say, why were the old days better than these? It is not wise to ask such a question. The reality, things just are. It's how we interpret it. And I will get back to that in a few moments because that is one of the main themes of this section about wisdom. Because here's what Solomon writes, going back to verse 1. A good name is better than fine perfume. A good name is better than fine perfume. And here's the thing. Does one get a good name just because they show up? I know, for example, whenever a person become a new pastor, or I know when I became the new head chaplain, at first everybody, you come in and, nobody knows you, and they give you some, what I call change, some leadway to do certain things. And they make assumptions because you're the pastor, or you're the chaplain, or whatever, that things are good. But here's the thing. Over time, people get to know you. And a good name is better than fine perfume. And the day of death is better than the day of birth. Because over time, people get to really know who you are. And your name or your reputation is more important than anything else. And it's something that you should guard. I know that's something that I do. Solomon goes on and makes it where it seems quite negative, but I want for us to understand that in life there is negative and positive. There's good and there's bad. And listen to what he says. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. Again, Proverbs. Why would he write something like this? And in reality, I want for us to look at it this way. Is it better to go to things where things go bad? Because here's the truth, what I have learned, and this is from personal experience. Failure is better than success. And let me see if I can explain this where we can understand. Whenever I do something for the first time and it's successful, what did I learn? I succeeded. And I think that, oh, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful. And I go on out thinking that, it's me. But when I try something and I fail, and I look at it and see why did I fail and learn the lessons from it and go on to succeed, I have a more valuable thing, and so do you. Because here's the thing. If we fail and we go to the house of mourning, the house of failure, the house of death, and we learn something, and the truth is, More things are learned from failure than from success. As a matter of fact, whenever I succeed, I don't give any thought to it. Oh, I just think, oh, how good I am. But when I fail, I learn the lessons. One of my favorite books is by a guy named John Maxwell, and the title of this book is called Failing Forward. Nobody is a success because they did everything right all the time. As a matter of fact, I can think of my life, how many times I have failed and how many times I've done certain things wrong and said certain things wrong. But as people have given me advice and I've learned from them, verse 5 says, it is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person. It is true failure that we learn. It is true mourning that we learn. It is true bad that we learn. It's my failure that have made me a better person and you a better person. But Solomon also means that house of mourning is good for you. For death is the destiny of everyone. Reality is, one of the things I learned about failure is I fail, you fail, we all fail. As a matter of fact, if somebody thinks they never fail, they're really lying. Failure is reality. We all fail. But the question is, what do we do about our failure? When we get knocked down, do we stay down or do we get back up? And that's what I'm talking about. Success where we win, we think we did it. But when we fail, that's an opportunity for us to get back up and say, God, I need your help. And so there are times when I heard rebuke, but because I failed, because I messed up. And I could either internalize it and think I'm a bad person, or I could say, hey, thanks for the advice and learn from it. And that's what I think Solomon is trying to teach us. It is better to go to the house of mourning where we are failing than to go to the house of feasting. Because here's the thing, and I know this is true. Have you ever noticed that not many person go from success to success? For example, take football. Very few teams in the history of football wins the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. As a matter of fact, this year, Kansas City was supposed to win the Super Bowl. I mean, last year they won. This year they plowed through everything. They were the number one team. And yet they lost. Because here's the thing. When a person fails and they want to win, they go out and learn the lessons and work hard to win. But when you are winning and you go to the house of feasting and you think, we're the champ, you forget to put in the work required to succeed. Because success is a process, just like failure is a process. Verse 3 says, frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. It's when you're sad, when you take time to reflect, that you can learn. It goes on, verse 4, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fool is in the house of a pleasure. And that's the point, is people who win, they think, oh, I'm good, I'm Mr. Know-It-All, I'm Mr. Do-It-All, I'm a success. And they forget that there are other people out there who are competing too. And I think that's what has happened to us as a church and as individual. We think we rely on past success. But one of my teachers reminded me something so profound. Past success does not equate today. What you did in the past is done and gone. It's past. Yesterday ended last night. What are you doing today? And I think that's an important lesson for us as a church. What are we doing today? For example, there are so many good lessons we can learn from COVID-19. As a church, we had to close the door. But did we really close? The news is, I don't know if there are many churches that all they did was podcasts like I'm doing right now. They never had a Sunday church. They just put it over podcasts. But the good news for us as a church, both Richville and Otter Tail, is we never close the door. And there are actually more people listening to the podcast that are, in a sense, attending church and learning. And I really believe, and I want for y'all to hear this. Yes, COVID was bad for the church. But I really believe that as people who want to have fellowship and had the opportunity to watch these podcasts, to be live on Facebook and to learn, that they will try our church and when the church is reopened. And I think it's only a couple months away. I really think by May, June for sure, we will be open up and having more and more people come in. Because here's the thing, failure, if we reflect, and when people were isolated and stuff and they want connection, church is one of those places. And so it's an opportunity for us to reach out to people and say, hey, I invite you to come to church. It's a great place to be. And the place of mourning where we are hurting for the last year is an opportunity to grow, for us to reflect and to go forward. He goes on and says, like the cracking of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. In reality, if last year was just success, we would think that we did it, rather than give God the credit, rather than reflecting upon what we did. And here's a couple things that I do. Whenever I do anything, I ask myself, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And what can I improve? And that's the same thing here. This past year, I don't know if you noticed that our podcast got better and better. When we first started, the first one was with this phone, and the sound quality and the video quality was terrible. I mean, I looked at some of the quality was terrible, and we got better. But it was the failure that made us better, because we then went out and looked, what can we do better? The house of mourning is better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fool is in pleasure. Here's the thing. Just because we got better doesn't mean we need to sit on our laurels. It means that we need to learn and get even better. That's what we're trying to do. Let's switch now to another topic. Briefly, verse 7 says, extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. I don't know if you have ever been extorted. I was in the prison environment for 26 years. And extortion is when a person who is bigger, stronger, try to take something from you by force. Think of the mafia here. In prison, mafia move is what I call it, where one inmate, because of brutal strength or because they belong to a gang, prey on the weak. And here, a person may think, I know it all. I know, I'm good, I'm rich, and somebody come in and extort them by gunpoint or by brute force. And it says, extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. And I can tell you, I've seen inmates who were extorted, and I've seen inmates who bribed others and bribed co-workers of mine. And the person, I give you a good example. I had a coworker who was a CO, brought in marijuana and tobacco for inmates for a few $100s. And he did it for a few $100s and got caught. He ended up getting 10 years in prison. Extortion corrupts the heart, and bribes corrupts you. And that's what this is all about. As Christians, we should live our lives with integrity and don't think we're above it. We're so smart, we're so wise that we're above it. Because I can tell you, there were inmates who came to me and tried to bribe me and tried to extort me and try to twist things. And life is that way. Don't think we are know-it-all and that we're above it, because extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. And I saw literally, in my 26 years, hundreds of people who were once like me working in the system as an officer, and then the next week or so they got caught, turned in, and now they're in prison for many different things. And I say like me because I know a chaplain, not one but two or three over my 26 years, that are now serving prison time or have served prison time. Verse 8, the end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. I could stay here for a long time, that patience is better than pride. Unfortunately, too many of us have pride and think that we are successful and we know it all. But here's the thing. We need to realize that whatever success we have, don't think that means that we're successful ever. As a matter of fact, I want to get to the second part of this lesson, because in life there's both success and failure. And when there's success, and when we're on top of the mountain, where can we go but to the bottom of the mountain? And when we're at the bottom of the mountain, don't get depressed, because life is this way. It's an up and down thing. Jumping to verse 11, it says, wisdom like an inheritance is a good thing, and benefit those who seize the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. In other words, if you have to choose between money and wisdom, choose wisdom. And here's the reason why. And I've heard this said, if you meet a man with money and you meet a man that is wise or have experience, the man with experience will have the money, and the man with the money will have experience. Because here's the thing: money in and of itself in the hands of a fool, what would a fool do with it? They'll spend it foolishly, and they won't have it anymore. But wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge and wisdom is that wisdom preserves those who have. And the best thing for us as Christians is to have both wisdom and money. I'm not saying that money is evil. Loving money is bad. But money and wisdom combined, and that's what I'm talking about. As Christians, we need to have both wisdom and money, because wisdom preserves those who have it, preserves health, wealth, and everything. Something we can think. But here's what Solomon writes, verse 13, a very pivotal verse. Consider what God has done. In other words, stop and think. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. When times are bad, consider this: God has created the one as well as the other. In other words, in life, God allows good and bad things to happen. But when good things happen, be happy about it. Be glad. But also realize, are good times going to last forever? And the answer is no. Are bad times going to be lasting forever? And the answer is no. Listen to what Solomon points out in this. God made them both. Verse 15. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these. In this meaningless life, we have seen good times, we have seen bad times. We have seen days of mourning. As a matter of fact, think back in Ecclesiastes Chapter 4, where we said there's a time to mend, a time for birth, a time for death. There's a time for both extremes. And he points it out and spells it out in this way. Verse 15 continues. The righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Does that happen? And the answer is yes, of course. So here is what happened. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whosoever fears God will avoid both extremes. I want to repeat that. Whosoever fears God will avoid both extremes. And what we have been talking about this evening is, yes, there are some times that there's good times, there are times there are bad times. But in reality, most of life, we need to avoid the extremes. Living in the past, for example, we need to avoid that extreme. Living in the future, we need to avoid that extreme. We need to live in the present. And we need to understand God, even today, some people may say it's bad. You go to another person, it's great. It's a matter of perspective. God created both good and evil. And God created good times and bad times. God is God, and he allows these things. And the question is, do not be over wicked. Don't, because here's the thing, the righteous perish, good people, or as Jesus put it, God send the rain on good people and evil people. God let the sun shine on the good and the bad. The reality, the sun is shining or the rain is raining. Some people think when it rains, it's bad. Or when it's, and all we should have is sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. Well, here's the reality. We need both rain and sunshine. As a matter of fact, places where there's nothing but sunshine, eventually what happened? It turns into a desert. Nothing grows in a desert. We need rain. We need good times and bad times. In order, as a matter of fact, I started this lesson saying it's during bad times that we stop and we reflect and we start considering what God has done. And we ask, okay, God, things were going good, now things are going bad. Let me stop and think. Isn't that what it's all about? Avoid both extremes. And when we have God on our side, we will. Verse 18 said, whosoever fears God will avoid all extreme. As a matter of fact, Solomon is making a vote for wisdom. He said, verse 19, wisdom make one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. A 1 to 10. Wisdom is valuable. It goes on and said, and he points out that in reality, there's no one that's good on earth. Verse 20, indeed, there's no one on earth who is righteous. No one on earth who does what is right and never sin. No one who does what is right and never sin. And that's one of the realities that we as Christians came to realize, is that we are sinners, we are wrong, and that we need God. Whosoever fears God will avoid these extremes. As a Christian, you are not, we're not perfect. As a matter of fact, the Bible makes it quite clear that the wages of sin is death, and we are all sinners. Indeed, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sin. He goes on and give an example, because some of us think that we are all perfect and all right. I can tell you, I make mistakes every day. I say the wrong thing, I think the wrong thing, I do the wrong thing. Just ask my wife or ask my kids. They can point out all the stupid things I've done and all the stupid things I've said. Listen to what it says. Verse 21. Do not pay attention to every word people say. I want to read that again. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you will hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. And I know that is true. There are times I've said things and then I realize, you, Ricardo, you hypocrite. We are all in the same boat. I am no better than you are. So there's no one righteous on earth. We are all sinners and we are all saved by grace through faith. Thanks be to God. And there are times we need to not pay attention to every little word people say, including my words. There are times I have to say, you know what, Ricardo, you suffer from foot and mouth disease. There are times that I open my mouth and insert not one, but both feet. That's reality. Because there are times I say good things and bad things. There are times that I say things that hurt people. Solomon said, verse 23, all this I tested by wisdom, and I am determined to be wise, but it was beyond me. If Solomon can say that, who am I not to agree with him? The reality, I have tried, and so have you. But we are sinners. Wages of sin is death. But thanks God to God, we fear God. We realize we're sinners, and we turn to him to be saved by grace. He goes on and said, I am determined to be wise, but it was beyond me. Whatever existed is far off and most profound. Who can discover it? I know I can't discover it. We've been studying now for a couple weeks here, and I can tell you that there are times that, we really have to stop and think, because we do learn from failure. I know I learn from failure. Matter of fact, whenever I say something and I realize that I failed, it is a time for me to ask for forgiveness and to try to be better, try to be a better Christian. Isn't that what life is all about? I know we won't get to the end of this chapter because this is something of my heart. We all fail. I fail, you fail, we all fail. The question is, what do we do with our failure? Do we get up and we try again? Or do we wallow in failure? And when times are good, I like the story about the ant. What do ants do all summer? Good times. They work because they know winter is coming. Reality is life is that way. There's summer, there's winter. There's good times, there's bad times. God created both summer and winter. But I can tell you, without winter, with all summer, where it's always hot, think of the Sahara Desert. It's always summer there. Would you want to live there? Or you want to live in a place where we get sunshine and rain, we get snow? I can tell you, we need all those things. Bad times, like we have had with COVID, is a time for us to reflect and say, oh, what can we do different? How can we grow the church? How can we make it stronger, better? How can we do something? I know I've said and done some dumb things in the last year, not just last year, my entire life. And so have you. Don't pay attention to every word people say, or you will hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart, as I know in my heart, that there are many times that you yourself, I myself, have cursed others. Character, failure builds character. Failure builds character. I know we're out of our time. Let me just read to the end here and we'll finish up today. I find more bitter than death the woman who ensnares a man. And this is one of those things. Whoever ensnares another. But here's what it says. The person who pleases God will escape people who ensnared him. And the point is, we need to put our faith in God. Want to read the last verse? This only have I found. God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search for many schemes. In other words, God created everything good. Read it again in the beginning. God, everything God created was good, including us. It's not God's fault that there is evil. It's because we are sinners. God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search for many schemes. I had to admit, just like you, I am a Christian because I had to admit I am a sinner and I need God. I went off on my own. And thanks be to God, by grace through faith I was saved. And that grace that God gave me, I pass on to you because I know I too am a sinner and that it's only by grace that I've been saved. And so, good times, bad times, thanks be to God. When I have a good time, I thank God, I enjoy it. When I have a bad time, I think, God, what's the lesson I can learn? Make sure that when you're celebrating, you don't celebrate too wrong. When we have a victory, celebrate. But when the celebration is over, move on. You can't live in the past. You can only live in the now. Thank you all. I will see you all next week. I know I went over by a couple minutes, but this happened to be one of those things I'm passionate about. See y'all next week.